Hello friends, welcome to Artist Confessional. It's Kyle, and today I'm taking you into the print shop and we're going to be working on my newest print called Tides and Gravity. Now, this is a studio vlog, and it's going to be picking up at that point where the drawings are completed, the stencils are printed out, and we're like entering into the print shop. We've moved from the digital world and now we're back into the analog world. And I'm going to show you kind of everything from the step when the drawing is done until the edition is printed. I'm also going to take the time to add in some voiceover explaining kind of what screen print actually is and talk a little bit more in depth about the process that actually goes into like the things behind the scene. So come hang out with me in this nice little cozy print video as I make my print called Tides and Gravity. If you want to make art while I make art, like I encourage you to do so. I have like brought out my stencils. I've written down the layer of Photoshop files which correspond to which has to get printed in what sequential order. I've looked at the different color swatches from like my physical printed out printer versus what's on my computer screen. So like I noticed, for instance, like this blue is supposed to be like cyan, and it's not at all. It's like nowhere near cyan. Here, I think I want to like match up the screens to the stencils. I want to organize which one's going to happen which one. And I think our very first layer is going to be this yellow. It's the full boxes. So the yellow will be these bottom parts. Then we print the teal, which is, I think here is our teal. Okay, so that will be the second layer, and then third layer is going to be these greens. So also in our color chart, this looks very blue, but I think that there's supposed to be a bit more green into it. So that will be some of the outline to that structure. Then we print yellow number 2. Because this is that like representation of water in some regards, so that they'll sit on top like that. Then we print cyan. We're missing some of our stencil. That's okay. That's good to know. I've got a bit of a snag. In one of the early layers, we are going to be missing information. So we have our yellow layer, which will get printed first. And then we run into, I think it's this one. I'm missing part of the stencil. Which is layer number 2. Okay, well we can at least print layer 1. That's not a problem. Layer 2 we'll have to contend with, and I'm sure I have some sort of solution for it. I didn't really stop to think about the fact that like maybe some of the screens might have greasy marks or the emulsion might not have been great, so I'm contending with like these little spots. There is some unwanted little tiny marks, like you can see in the middle of the frame. There's some little smudge, whatever you are, you, whatever this is. Down here, this guy right here, these 2 little dots, what are you? Here, I don't think that's supposed to be broken up, but you know, that'll be whatever. In some of these upper marks, you can see at a whole, they're all supposed to be open, but there's like a couple that are not. Like this little bit and this bit. I'm gonna start with just this yellow straight out of the tube, maybe alter it a bit with titanium white to lighten it a bit and see where we are at. I can do a pretty basic draw test. So I think that we're a little ways away. I think I have the yellow. I'm a little bit bummed that I don't have the second screen that I can just work with it. Chrissy asked if I could just block off this one section and just not print that part, which maybe if I don't want to do any more screen shooting or whatever, I could do that. It probably is not going to really lose anything to the drawing, to be honest. I'm beginning to set up my registration, and I do that by placing this sheet of acetate across the table. I make a tape hinge on the far side, and on this side what I'm doing is I am using punch tabs. I have a tab taped to the Mylar, and I have the punch tab taped to the table, and this helps me to keep my Mylar in registration when I'm pulling my prints. This is my paper mock-up, so this is a digitally printed version of the Photoshop file that I've just mounted onto the same final sized paper that I'm going to be using for the edition. And I'm trying to just make sure that where I clamp in the screen, it's not going to crush the paper, and that I'm going to be able to like have enough space to pull the squeegee. And I'm just kind of like really trying to think through the process of like all the actions of what will go into printing this particular layer. With my first layer screen clamped into the hinges, I've attached these letterpress blocks, they're just little blocks of hardwood, to the screen with some green painter's tape, and this is going to keep the screen's distance from the metal frame to the table equal to the same distance from the hinge side of the screen. Is so that when I am pulling with the squeegee, that there is good snap. And snap refers to like when the screen goes down and kisses onto the paper, the screen needs to bounce back up. And if you don't do these blocks, what happens is towards the hinges, you have very good snap, but then as you get closer to the other side, you have smaller and smaller snap, and so you can get bleeding or you can get kind of fuzzier, fatter lines. Ink goes on top of the screen, and we use a squeegee, which is this kind of rubbery blade, to smush the ink through the fabric of the mesh. We pull one print onto the Mylar, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my digital mock-up, slide it underneath the Mylar, align the colors, and when that's good, I'll hold the paper in place, pull the Mylar back, and here's where I know that this is the first color. I'm going to use a letterpress ruler to kind of just butt into the corner of it and act as a registration system for my first layer of color. The reason why I'm doing this is so that in the end, my image ends up being straight, and I know it looks as close as I can get it to the digital copy that I have here. So things aren't like weirdly crooked or tilted or not square to like the frames of the paper. I accidentally printed on top of my registration sheet. You can see the yellow is on top of the yellow, and that sucks because it means my registration sheet is now a little bit messier. But what is cool is that the yellow that it printed is pretty close, and I feel like good for representing the yellow that's here. So I thought that was kind of neat. I'm into making up this teal type color. I have maybe some clear base I need to start with. I want some yellow. I want some of this. My plan's gonna be start with the turquoise light, add white to it to lighten it. And then I think we need to add a bit of the yellow perhaps to tone down the cyan in this. So maybe if we are adding in some yellow, and maybe we add in a bit of this yellow, and I feel like we're not quite dark enough. So let's go with another splish of that. Okay, now we can mix those. So we're a little bit into like sky blue as opposed to like a turquoise. Okay, how do we fix this color? Let's just start with a straight white. And let's grab a little bit of this red. That's the dulling tone we're looking for. Okay, let's get this mixed together, and then we'll take a swatch test. I think that if I can get the pigment actually mixed together, I think that this color is going to be close. This is the new color. You can see how close we actually got. I'm pretty pleased with that. I think this color is good. I know it's not exactly the same shade, but it's like pretty close, and I hope that with the bit more punchy yellow that I have, that with the little bit now what is more punchy aqua will work well together to have a vibrancy that the dull printer toner presents, I guess, in my image. In Photoshop, these things look a lot bolder and a lot more saturated than they do on this printer sheet of paper. Not that this color palette's not bad, I actually quite like it. But I think my colors are a little bit more vibrant, a little bit more saturated. In our second layer, what we have to do is now we have to start actually really thinking about registration. So we'll print the blue onto the mylar, we'll slide our print underneath, and that's just the print that only has the yellow on it, and we will visually line up the image. Now, I try to use visual cues within the image to help me do this, like such as straight edges or special dots that I put into the print. In this particular print, I'm trying to use the opposite corners because that's how you get the best registration. You take 2 points as far away as possible and you try and make them always consistent. Now, sometimes you forget to hit record and you lose all of the footage that you thought you filmed. However, this is the third layer of the print. It's a darker green tone that the base of the color starts with the blue from the previous layer to ensure that there's some sort of harmony between what I'm printing in this layer and the previous layer. Also, these things are going to be submerged in the water within the print, and so I wanted that tone to feel in harmony with one another. I store my ink in a little saran wrap tube. I find this to be a really cheap way to store the ink, and it reduces clutter in my studio because I don't have to store everything in kind of bulky jars. I feel like it keeps for a lot longer because there's no air within the tube. My ink stays pretty good for several months, if not years on end. I'm printing a second layer of yellow, and I have this problem that I didn't quite mix enough from the first layer, and so I'm trying to remix the original yellow that I had. And once I get kind of close, I'll combine both the old yellow from the first layer and the new yellow. As you can see, I'm very quite green, and so I'm trying to take different kind of swatches or piles and trying to augment the color in a way that I feel like will get me to the desire. This is the color I kind of landed on, and I'm gonna mix this with the other chunk of the color, and hopefully it'll be relatively the same tone. I think this is a bad mistake on my part. I should have just mixed a lot more of that yellow, knowing that I was going to print a second layer of yellow in this print. The reason why I am printing that second layer of yellow is that the way that the colors stacked in the imagery, I wanted yellow to be behind and in front of some of the blue layer, just because of the way that the organization of like step 1 to step 2, step 3, and this filling up and emptying of this bauble. Now, I did okay with it. I don't think I nailed the color quite exactly. However, I do feel like it's like maybe a bit more peachy and thus a little bit more light in tone. And that's okay because it's the top cube in the stack. I'm fine if it's like a little out of tone with the rest of it. It really doesn't really bother me that much. It's really lovely to see how all of these things are starting to stack. I think like you can really see how the forms are lining up, and I'm feeling good about how the registration is going. And I'm excited to see what happens once we put in the blue of the kind of like rushing out water and what that will do to transform the image itself. Did you know that we can store gravitational energy? And there's a lot of really cool things that are happening with like old mine shafts turning into what's called gravity batteries. You are utilizing excess energy to lift up a heavy weight, and then when we have excess of energy, and then when we need that energy, you can lower that weight, and it would pull a series of gears and wheels that would translate that lowering force into power. And I thought to myself, there is a possibility within tides to help reduce the load when that battery is being repositioned back up into the charge state. And that's what tides and gravity is about. So in tides and gravity, what happens is as the tide comes in, it fills up a large vessel, the tide recedes, and then the vessel becomes a gravity battery that lowers and turns gears, which then turn a turbine and generates power. And when the thing gets to the bottom, the tide is also at the bottom, the water pours out of the vessel and the tide lifts the bauble back up to the height of the tide, fills back up and repeats the cycle. And I thought that this was like a really cool proposition to combine tidal power and gravity power into the same thing. I think that energy is probably the biggest like contentious point in Earth. Everything's always about energy, and we are going to hit that point where we need more energy, and be it through like fusion power that could potentially solve all of it. We're not quite there. So in the interim, what's cool is seeing how a lot of people are trying to tackle this problem without just throwing like coal and oil at it. I have a really good time printing this. I really like how the colors turned out. When I see it now and I kind of look back at it, it's been a couple days since I printed it, that I really actually love how the colors ended up. What I like about the colors is how they have a muted tone to them, and they're not so, I guess like when you're looking at them in Photoshop, they feel very backlit and kind of this like saturation, this computery saturation. And now that when they are printed, they have that muted quality that I'm coming to really like in working with water-based screen printing inks. I have my edition for Tide and Gravity. I think that's what we're going to call it. I'm not 100% sold on it. It might be Tide and Gravity Battery. No, that doesn't sound right either. I'm gonna go through and figure out what's in the no pile, what's in a maybe pile, and what's in a yes pile, and kind of rank them. And then there'll be like some sort of like cutoff point where I feel like any print past this point is not good enough for the edition, and any print on this side is fine. I know that there's gonna be some modulation or like slight differences between them. And that's the nature of print. Sometimes there's like a little bit of an extra bloop here or a blip there. And as long as they like all kind of feel and look pretty much the same, they can be part of that edition. And it's something that I've had to just kind of let go. By that, I mean my striving for like that perfection. As much as I want to be like perfect about things, I'm recognizing in life that you can't always be perfect about everything. And sometimes you just gotta let some stuff slide. So let's talk about what is a no, what is a yes, and we're gonna sign this edition. I'm not sure about this one. So if you see like way up here, there's like this splitch, bloop, whatever you want to call it. It looks like that. That's not good. So I think this is maybe a no pile. Let's put the no in the sunshine. They can have their last light of day. This one also has the same bloop. 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 Okay, so they all have the same bloop. So we need like a bit of a baseline. I wonder if I got rid of that bloop. No, the bloop is like on every single, it's on every single print. Great. Some of the things that we're looking at are like kind of registration, where one color meets up with another. I see like right about here, I see right here, there's a bit of white showing. And then if we come down this print all the way to this last gear or winch, there's a misregister between the blue and the darker blue. So that's what I'm talking about. That isn't necessarily bad in my books. It's not necessarily great. I think that I'm looking for things that just are like really glaringly different at this point. When I look at like kind of the line fidelity across the middle chunk here, we have a bit of like breakout in the screen on the yellow layer and on the dark blue layer. So here's what I'm talking about with like kind of some of that breakout and the, like, I guess like a weak line work or clogged screen kind of quality. You can really see it on this one, and that's fine. This looks okay to me. The yellow, the second yellow layer from this print, which colored in these boxes, as evident right here, that's clearly missing. So this is clearly a no. This one seems to be all right as well. It is a shame when something like this happens and an entire print is kind of ruined because of that. This one seems to be okay, although the yellow's a little bit off, but I think that'll be fine. This one looks fine too. In the end, only 13 made it into the edition. I started out with 20 sheets of paper and I thought I was gonna get 15, but when Chris and I looked at it quickly, there was 2 that were bad, and so we had to take them out. That's how it goes sometimes. Thanks for joining me on this adventure. That concludes this print. You can join me next time as we go on another art adventure. Chrissy and I will get up to mischief. We'll make something cool. You can support our channel by liking this video, subscribing to our channel. You could become a member to our Patreon community, Spark Club, by following some of the links down in the description below. If you really like this print, you can find it online on our store, and you can purchase it and I'll mail it to you. And that's goodbye from me and Ziggy. I'll catch you all next time.
What are the secrets of studio?